Part 1, The Farmer and His Sons. Once upon a time, in a quiet and peaceful village surrounded by lush green fields and dense forests, there lived an old farmer. He was a kind and wise man, respected by all the villagers for his honesty, hard work, and love for nature. His small farmhouse sat at the edge of the village, with a little garden full of flowers, fruit trees, and a few chickens clucking around. Despite his humble life, the farmer had 3 sons, all of whom were young, strong, and remarkably handsome. The eldest son, Thomas, had broad shoulders, a bright smile, and a sense of responsibility that made him seem older than his years. The second son, Henry, was clever and cheerful, always laughing and joking, with sparkling eyes that seemed to see the world in color. The youngest son, Vico, was quiet, thoughtful, and kind-hearted. He often wandered into the fields and forests, speaking gently to animals and appreciating the smallest wonders of nature. Though less confident than his brothers, Vico's heart was filled with honesty and courage, qualities that could not be measured by appearance alone. One sunny morning, the farmer gathered his sons in the courtyard. His eyes were full of pride and a little sadness too, for he knew that it was time for them to start their own families. "My sons," he began, his voice firm but gentle, "you are all old enough to be married. It is time for each of you to find a sweetheart and begin a life of happiness with her. I want you to find someone who will bring joy and love into your lives, just as you bring joy to mine." The 3 brothers exchanged nervous glances. "Father," Thomas said, "how are we supposed to find our brides? We live in this small village, and there are so many people. It seems impossible to find the right one by ourselves." "Yes, Father," Henry added, "we will obey you, but we need your guidance. We do not know how to find someone suitable." The farmer nodded knowingly. "I understand," he said. "It will not be easy. But our family has a tradition, an old custom that helps us find our brides in a way that is guided by nature itself." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Each of you will go to our farm, take an axe, and cut down a tree. Observe carefully where the tree falls. The direction it falls will lead you to your bride. But before cutting a tree, you must plant another one and promise to take care of it. A tree represents life, growth, and respect for nature. You cannot simply cut without giving back. This tradition is not only about finding your bride but also about honoring the world that sustains us." The sons nodded, understanding the wisdom in their father's words. They each chose a spot in the farm to plant a new sapling, carefully digging holes and placing the young trees into the earth. Thomas planted a sturdy oak, Henry a flowering cherry, and Vico a delicate walnut tree. They watered them, patted the soil around the roots, and promised their father they would care for these trees as they grew. "Now," the farmer said, "after planting your tree, take your axe and cut down an old tree. Observe the direction in which it falls. That will guide you to the person you are meant to marry. Trust the path, and trust your heart." With hearts full of hope and a little nervous excitement, the sons began their task. Thomas swung his axe with strength and precision, cutting an old oak tree. It fell gracefully to the north. "North," he murmured, "that must be the direction where my bride awaits. Perhaps it is the girl I have always admired from afar. I will go to the north and speak to her today." Henry, watching his brother, took his turn. He cut down a tree that fell to the south. South, he thought. This is where my beloved dances and laughs in the village square. I will go to her and ask her to be my wife. Surely she will say yes, for we have always shared smiles and secrets. Vico, the youngest, stepped forward and cut down a tree. To his surprise, it fell deep into the forest. His two elder brothers laughed at him. Look at this, Vico. Thomas chuckled. Are you really going to follow this direction? Will you find a bride in the forest, perhaps a wolf or a deer? Vico did not laugh. He looked at the fallen tree and nodded solemnly. I will follow where my tree has fallen. I am certain that I will find my bride in that direction, even if it seems impossible. With that, the three brothers set out on their journeys. Thomas went north and soon reached the girl he had admired. With a confident smile and steady voice, he asked her to marry him, and she accepted immediately. Henry journeyed south, found the girl he loved, and proposed. She too said yes without hesitation. Vico, however, ventured deep into the forest. The dense trees surrounded him, and no humans were in sight. Days passed, and he grew tired and disheartened. Perhaps I have been wrong, he thought. Maybe I will return home without finding anyone. As he wandered, Vico stumbled upon a small, humble hut hidden among the trees. To his surprise, it seemed empty at first. Then, he noticed a tiny creature, a little mouse. Who are you? Vico asked softly. There is no one else here. How can you be my bride? The mouse looked up at him with sparkling eyes. I am no ordinary mouse, she said gently. But if your heart is true, I can be your companion. Vico hesitated. You are a mouse, he said. How can I take you as my sweetheart? Trust me, the mouse replied. Though I am small, my love and loyalty are great. I will be true to you, if you accept me as I am. Vico smiled, moved by her courage and charm. The mouse sang a sweet song and danced gracefully, lifting his spirits and making him laugh. At the end, he said firmly, I like you. I will take you as my sweetheart. The mouse's eyes shone with joy. I will wait for you, she promised. Until you return, I will remain here, thinking of you. Part 2, The Test of the Brides. The three brothers returned home with their brides. Thomas and Henry walked proudly beside the women they loved, while Vico quietly held the hand of the little mouse, still amazed that such a tiny creature could capture his heart. The farmer, curious to meet the young women, called his sons to him in the courtyard. So, my sons, he began, have you found your sweethearts? Thomas smiled broadly. Father, my bride is beautiful. She has rosy lips and a smile that lights up the room. I am happy to call her my own. Henry chimed in, mine too, father. She has long golden hair and a voice so sweet that I could listen to her sing all day. Vico stepped forward hesitantly. Father, my sweetheart is small, delicate, and gentle. She may seem different, but she is true and loving. She is a little mouse, yet she brings me joy and comfort I have never known before. The two elder brothers laughed softly, exchanging amused glances. A mouse, Thomas whispered to Henry. Really, Vico, are you serious? Vico's face remained calm. Yes, father. She is gentle and kind. Her love is true, and that is all that matters to me. The farmer smiled, though a twinkle of curiosity appeared in his eyes. Very well, he said. I will test your sweethearts to see if they are skilled and resourceful, as every bride in our family should be. First, I want each of them to bake a loaf of bread for me. The first two brides nodded confidently. They entered the kitchen, working with practiced hands. Flour dusted the air as they kneaded the dough, shaped it carefully, and placed it in the oven. The smell of warm bread soon filled the farmhouse. Thomas and Henry beamed with pride as their loaves baked perfectly. Vico, however, frowned. He turned to his little mouse bride, worry etched across his face. Sweetheart, I am afraid, he said softly. Father asks for a loaf of bread, but you are a mouse. How could you possibly bake bread like the others? The mouse looked up at him with sparkling eyes. Do not worry, Vico. I may be small, but I am clever. Trust me, and I will find a way. But how? Vico asked, still uncertain. I have never seen a mouse bake bread. It seems impossible. The mouse smiled mysteriously and took a tiny silver bell from around her neck. She rang it 3 times, each chime clear and bright. Suddenly, hundreds of little mice appeared from the forest surrounding the hut. They gathered around, attentive and obedient, awaiting her orders. Each of you, she commanded with dignity, bring me the finest grain of wheat you can find. In an instant, the mice scurried off into the trees, underbrush, and fields, returning moments later with grains of the purest, whitest wheat Vico had ever seen. Carefully, the mouse took the grains and, with the help of her tiny helpers, ground them into flour, kneaded the dough, shaped it, and baked a beautiful loaf of bread. Vico watched in awe. I cannot believe it, he whispered. She has done what seemed impossible. The next morning, the 3 brothers presented their loaves to their father. Thomas offered his rye bread. This bread is good for hard-working people, he said proudly. The farmer nodded. Indeed, it is strong and hearty. Henry presented his barley bread, which was slightly sweeter and lighter. Barley is wholesome, and this bread is fine, the father remarked with approval. Finally, Vico stepped forward, carrying the white loaf baked by the little mouse. Father, he said quietly, my sweetheart made this for you. White bread, Thomas exclaimed, raising an eyebrow. Vico, how could a mouse bake such a loaf? Surely she is wealthy or has magic. Vico smiled. Father, she is true and clever. She rang a silver bell, and her helpers gathered the finest wheat and assisted her. This is her work. The farmer examined the loaf, breaking it open to reveal the soft, golden interior. Remarkable, he murmured. Your sweetheart is indeed extraordinary. I am pleased with all 3 brides, but Vico's, she has something special. The next test was of weaving skill. The father instructed each bride to weave a piece of cloth for him. Thomas and Henry's brides produced simple but neat fabrics, a mix of cotton and linen. Vico's little mouse looked worried for a moment but then took out her silver bell once again. Do not fret, my love, she whispered to Vico. "I will show them what I can do." She rang the bell thrice. The forest responded immediately. Hundreds of little mice appeared, ready to obey her commands. "Fetch the finest fibers of flax," she ordered, and in moments, the mice returned, each carrying the softest, silkiest strands imaginable. With careful paws, the mouse wove the fibers into a delicate, sheer piece of linen, smaller than a handkerchief. She placed it inside a tiny nutshell and handed it to Vico. "Take this to your father," she said softly. Vico did so, a mixture of pride and apprehension on his face. The elder brothers laughed when they saw the nutshell. "Vico, your bride is supposed to weave a piece of cloth, not a nutshell," Thomas said, chuckling. Vico opened the nutshell, and the sheer, perfect fabric shimmered in the sunlight. His father gasped. How did she manage this? This is the finest linen I have ever seen. Truly, your sweetheart is a princess in her skill and her heart." The father turned to the three sons, his eyes twinkling. "Now, bring your sweethearts home. I wish to meet them all personally." Vico's mouse bride was overjoyed. She dressed elegantly, her tiny clothes sparkling, and prepared to leave. She rang her silver bell and ordered a tiny coach to appear, drawn by 5 tiny mice as coachmen. Vico's heart leaped with happiness and amazement. The coach rolled forward, delicate yet majestic, ready to take them home. Part 3, The Journey Home and the Magic Revealed. With the morning sun casting golden rays over the forest, Vico and his tiny mouse bride prepared for the journey back to his father's home. The little mouse, now dressed elegantly in a shimmering gown, rang her silver bell once again. Instantly, a tiny, delicate coach appeared, crafted as if from a nutshell, and 5 glossy little mice took their positions as coachmen, ready to pull the coach with precise coordination. Vico blinked in awe. I cannot believe this," he whispered. "How can such a tiny creature create all of this?" The mouse smiled, her whiskers twitching with excitement. "Do not worry, Vico. Everything I do is for you. Trust me, and soon your father and brothers will see the truth." With a gentle push, the tiny coach began rolling along the forest path. Vico walked beside it, carefully ensuring that his beloved mouse was safe and comfortable. The birds sang overhead, and the rustle of leaves accompanied their unusual procession. It was a sight that no ordinary villager could ever imagine, a miniature coach drawn by mice, with a small princess sitting gracefully inside. As they approached a river that flowed between the forest and the village, they needed to cross a narrow wooden bridge. Suddenly, a burly man appeared from nowhere, blocking their path. He looked down at the coach and burst out laughing. "What is this?" he sneered. "A tiny coach drawn by mice, ha ha ha. Surely, this little creature cannot be serious." Before Vico could react, the man scooped up the coach and all its tiny mice into his hands and hurled them into the river with a cruel laugh. Vico's heart sank. He gasped and ran to the edge of the riverbank, peering into the rippling water. "No, no. My sweetheart. My little mouse. Oh, what have they done?" Tears filled his eyes as he searched the riverbank. But there was no sign of the tiny coach, the mice, or the mouse herself. Vico slumped in despair, grief weighing heavily upon his heart. I should never have brought her out here, he whispered, feeling helpless and sorrowful. Then, just as his tears blurred his vision, something extraordinary happened. Across the river, a magnificent coach appeared, larger than life, drawn by 5 glossy, powerful horses. And inside the coach sat a beautiful young woman, her gown sparkling like sunlight on water, her hair cascading in golden waves, and her eyes shimmering with warmth and love. Vico's mouth fell open. It's you!" he exclaimed, running toward the coach. Are you my little mouse?" The woman laughed softly, a sound like music. "Yes, Vico," she said. "It was me all along. I was the little mouse you accepted as your sweetheart. Do you remember my promise to stay true to you?" Vico nodded, overcome with emotion. "I will never forget," he said, his voice trembling. "Even when I thought I had lost you, I knew your heart was true." The woman's eyes glowed with magic. "I am no longer under the curse that made me a mouse," she explained. "I am a princess. Long ago, I was cursed by an evil spell that could only be broken if someone loved me without knowing my true identity. Your kindness, Vico, and your willingness to accept me even as a mouse broke the spell." Vico's heart leapt. "So all along, you were a princess," he said, disbelief mixing with joy. "Yes," she replied. "And now that the curse is broken, I can join you in your world, and we can go to your home together. Your father and brothers will see the truth, and we will finally be together without fear or hiding." Vico extended his hand, and the princess helped him into the coach. They traveled together toward the village, the horses' hooves clattering on the path as the coach moved with elegance and grace. Birds flew above them, as if celebrating the triumph of love and courage over doubt and fear. When they arrived at Vico's home, the sight was breathtaking. The 3 brothers and their brides were waiting in the courtyard, and the farmer was already there, his eyes filled with curiosity. Thomas and Henry were struck speechless by the magnificent coach and the beautiful woman who stepped down from it. "Father," Vico said, his voice steady with pride, "this is my sweetheart. She is a princess, and I found her because I trusted her heart, not her appearance." The farmer's eyes widened. "A princess here in our village," he exclaimed. "Where did you find her?" "In the forest," Vico replied. "My tree fell in that direction, and it led me to her. She was small, delicate, and seemed a mouse at first, but her heart was pure and true." The 2 elder brothers looked at each other, astonished and humbled. "If only our trees had led us to the forest," Thomas murmured. "Perhaps we too could have found someone as remarkable." Henry nodded silently, realizing that appearances are not always what matters most. Vico turned to the princess, holding her hand tightly. "Are you ready?" he asked softly. "I am," she said, smiling warmly. "Because of your kindness, Vico, and your willingness to see me for who I truly am, I can now be myself. And together, we will be happy." The farmer, seeing the love and devotion between his son and the princess, smiled and blessed them. "Vico, my son, you have chosen wisely. Your heart saw what eyes cannot see. You have shown courage, honesty, and love, and that is more important than anything else." The princess curtsied to the farmer. "I am grateful for your blessing," she said. "And I will honor your family always." The villagers, who had gathered to see the spectacle, whispered among themselves in amazement. No one had ever seen such a sight, a little mouse transformed into a radiant princess, a young man whose kindness and heartfulness had overcome every obstacle. And so, Vico and the princess were married in a grand celebration. Flowers adorned every corner, music filled the air, and the people rejoiced in the triumph of true love. Even Thomas and Henry found wisdom in the events. They realized that love is not about appearances or ease, but about acceptance, trust, and sincerity. From that day forward, Vico and his princess lived happily, ruling their hearts with kindness, honesty, and devotion to each other. Their story spread throughout the village and the neighboring towns, inspiring others to see beyond the surface and cherish the goodness within. Part 4, Life with the Princess and Lessons of the Heart. After the grand wedding, Vico and the princess settled into life together, and the village buzzed with stories of the little mouse who was a princess. But life, as the wise always know, is not just about grand celebrations. It is about the daily moments, the small gestures, and the love that grows quietly yet steadily. The princess, though once tiny and delicate, adapted gracefully to her new life. She had the poise and intelligence of royalty but retained the simplicity and humility she had as a mouse. Vico admired her every day, not only for her beauty but for her wisdom, kindness, and the way she could find joy in the smallest things: a dancing leaf, a singing bird, or the warm sun on the village rooftops. Vico's father, initially astonished by the miraculous events, watched carefully as his youngest son's life blossomed. The farmer observed how Vico treated his princess with patience and respect. He noticed how the princess never demanded luxury beyond what she needed. Instead, she used her cleverness and foresight to help the family farm prosper and to bring happiness to all who crossed her path. One sunny morning, the princess woke early and walked through the garden. She knelt to water the young saplings that Vico had planted long ago, remembering the day his tree had guided him to her. The gentle care she gave to each plant reminded Vico of her magical nature, the way she had summoned help with a silver bell and organized hundreds of tiny creatures to accomplish the impossible. Yet now, even without magic, she nurtured life with love and attention, proving that real magic often comes from patience and dedication. "Good morning, my love," Vico said softly, approaching her with a warm smile. "The roses are blooming beautifully today, thanks to your care." The princess turned and laughed lightly. "It is your love for this garden that inspires me. Each plant, each tree, holds a story, just like our lives. You taught me that a small heart filled with love can create wonders, Vico." Life in the village continued, and the farmer and the two elder brothers came to see Vico and his princess often. At first, they had been skeptical, even mocking, but as they observed the harmony and happiness between the couple, they learned the value of kindness and acceptance. Thomas and Henry began to understand that true love and wisdom are not measured by appearances or wealth, but by the heart and the courage to embrace the unexpected. One day, the princess invited the villagers to a feast in the garden. Tables were laid with fresh bread, fruits, and flowers, and the air was filled with laughter and music. She moved among the people gracefully, listening to their stories and offering gentle advice. Even the smallest children felt her warmth, and animals seemed drawn to her presence, as if they could sense her pure heart. Vico watched her with admiration. "You have brought life and joy to everyone, not just to me," he said. The princess smiled. "It is because I have learned from you, Vico. You loved me when I seemed insignificant, when no one would have guessed I could be anything more than a little mouse. That is why I can give love so freely now." As the seasons changed, the couple faced minor challenges, as all lives do. There were storms that threatened the crops, disputes among villagers, and moments of exhaustion. Yet, together, they faced each difficulty with wisdom and patience. The princess used her cleverness to solve problems, often finding creative solutions that surprised even Vico, while Vico's kindness and courage provided strength and reassurance. One afternoon, Vico's father approached them in the orchard. "Vico, I have watched you carefully over these months," he said. "I must admit, I have learned from you as well. Your heart guided you to the true princess, not appearances or ease. I am proud, and I bless your life together." Vico bowed respectfully. "Thank you, father. Your guidance, the tradition of the tree, and your blessing all led me here. But it was her heart that made this life possible." The princess knelt beside Vico and said, "It is true. We each must see beyond the obvious, beyond the surface. That is the secret to love and happiness. The world rewards those who are kind, patient, and courageous, and punishes cruelty and mockery." In the evenings, Vico and the princess would walk through the fields, hand in hand, often recalling their first meeting in the forest. The princess sometimes chuckled, remembering the surprise and doubt on Vico's face when he first saw her as a mouse. "You did not hesitate, Vico," she said. "Even when I seemed small and strange, you trusted your heart. That is why we are here today." Vico laughed softly. "I could not have known then what I know now. But I do know this: love is not about how someone looks, or whether others approve. It is about trust, honesty, and courage. You proved all of those, my love." The villagers often spoke of Vico and his princess as an example of true love and virtue. The story of a little mouse who was actually a princess reminded everyone that appearances can be deceiving, and that kindness, honesty, and courage are the truest measures of greatness. Even the two elder brothers learned from the story. Thomas, who had once believed that strength and charm alone could win hearts, began to notice the depth of character in those around him. Henry, who had always valued cleverness and charm, realized that patience and trust were more powerful than any outward skill. They both respected Vico more than ever, and in their own ways, sought to live with the same integrity and compassion that Vico and his princess exemplified. And so, Vico and his princess lived a life filled with love, wonder, and simple joys. They cultivated the garden, tended to the animals, and shared wisdom with the villagers. The magic of the silver bell, though no longer necessary to summon the mice, remained as a symbol of the miracles that kindness and true love can bring. As years passed, the couple grew stronger together, not just in love but in partnership, proving that trust, patience, and courage are the foundations of a happy life. Their story, told and retold by villagers, reminded everyone that true beauty and greatness come from within, and that even the smallest among us can be the most extraordinary. Part 5: Happiness, Wisdom, and the Legacy of Love. As the years passed, Vico and his princess continued to live in harmony, their love growing deeper with each day. The village, once quiet and ordinary, now buzzed with stories and laughter, all inspired by the tale of a young man who trusted his heart, and a princess who showed that even the smallest among us can hold great power and grace. The princess, who had once been a little mouse, never forgot her humble beginnings. She moved gracefully through her new home, tending not only to Vico and the family farm but also to the villagers who had supported them. Her presence brought warmth and encouragement to everyone she met. She often visited the elderly, shared wisdom with children, and ensured that every family in need received a helping hand. The villagers, in turn, admired her not just for her beauty or her royal status, but for her compassion and the genuine love she gave freely. Vico, equally devoted, never took their happiness for granted. Each morning, he walked through the garden with his princess, inspecting the trees and plants they had nurtured together. He often marveled at how the smallest actions, watering a sapling, tending to the soil, could create growth and beauty over time. "See, my love," he would say, "just as the forest and the garden grow with care, so does our life and love. It is the little things that matter most." The children of the village would gather around them in the evenings to hear stories about the adventures that had brought Vico and the princess together. They listened, wide-eyed, as he recounted the journey through the forest, the tiny hut, the silver bell, and the loyal mice who had helped in the times of need. And when the story reached the moment when the little mouse transformed into a princess, the children would gasp in awe. The princess smiled as she watched the children's fascination. "Remember," she said gently, "true love and kindness are the greatest magic. They can break any curse, overcome any obstacle, and transform the world around you. Never judge by appearances, and always trust your heart." Even the two elder brothers, Thomas and Henry, who had once laughed at Vico's choice, learned invaluable lessons. Thomas realized that strength and confidence were only meaningful when paired with humility and empathy. Henry understood that cleverness and charm could only carry someone so far, genuine love and integrity were far more powerful. Over time, they sought to emulate Vico's example, building families and lives filled with compassion and honesty. The little silver bell, once a tool of magical assistance, remained in the princess's home as a symbol of trust, resourcefulness, and the miracles that can come from love. She would occasionally ring it, summoning the small creatures who had been loyal helpers during the earliest days, not for necessity but to remind herself and Vico of the extraordinary journey they had shared. On the anniversary of the day Vico first met the little mouse in the forest, they would walk to the very spot where their adventure began. The princess would kneel and plant a new sapling, just as they had in the farm so many years ago. "This tree," she said, "represents the growth of our love, our respect for life, and the journey we have shared together." Vico would stand beside her, holding her hand, and together they would watch the new life take root, knowing that their hearts, like the trees, had grown strong through care and dedication. The villagers often remarked on the extraordinary bond between Vico and the princess. Their love was visible in every glance, every gentle word, every act of kindness. Even animals seemed drawn to their presence. Birds would perch nearby, deer would quietly observe from the forest edge, and the tiniest creatures would not flee from the princess's touch. All who met them felt the warmth and purity of their hearts. As they grew older, Vico and the princess took on a quiet role of mentorship and guidance. They encouraged young couples in the village, teaching them that relationships require patience, honesty, and selflessness. They reminded the villagers that sometimes the most remarkable love stories begin in unexpected places and that courage and faith in the heart are rewarded in ways no one can imagine. The princess often reflected on her time as a little mouse. "Vico," she said one evening, "if you had judged me by my appearance, or if you had doubted the tiny and the humble, our story would have ended before it began. But you saw the heart within, and that made everything possible." Vico squeezed her hand gently. "It was never about appearances," he said. "It was about trust, courage, and love. That is why our life is so rich and full. And because we were kind and true to each other, we built something far greater than any palace or treasure. It is a life of joy and meaning, shared with everyone we care about." And so, their story became legend. Children grew up hearing about the little mouse who was a princess and the young man who loved her without hesitation. Villagers carried the lessons in their hearts, to be kind, to trust, and to value the spirit over outward appearances. The farm flourished, the forest remained alive with birds and animals, and every tree they planted stood as a testament to growth, care, and enduring love. Vico and his princess lived long, happy lives, devoted to one another and to the world around them. They never forgot the small beginnings, the forest hut, the silver bell, or the tiny friends who had helped them. Every day was a reminder that love and goodness, when genuine and unwavering, are the truest forms of magic in the world. And thus, the story of the little mouse who was a princess came to an end not as a tale of fantasy alone, but as a lesson in courage, kindness, and the extraordinary power of seeing the heart beyond appearances. Vico and his princess remained a beacon of hope and inspiration for all, proving that with love, honesty, and patience, anything is possible. The villagers would whisper this story for generations, and even the smallest creatures were said to remember the silver bell that had once summoned them to do great deeds for the sake of love and loyalty. In the hearts of all who heard it, the story lived on, a gentle reminder that true happiness is found not in wealth or beauty, but in the simple, profound magic of love, trust, and kindness.